Good afternoon and welcome. My name's Chuck Marino. I'm the CEO of Sentinel Security Solutions. And this afternoon, we have two exceptional guests as we look forward to discussing lessons learned regarding planning and supporting the recent Super Bowl, which was Super Bowl 56, held at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Our first guest is Robert Gummer from the National Football League. Rob has been in the intelligence community for over 23 years, starting as an Army intel officer for 8 years. He currently oversees the Global Security Operations Center for the NFL, where he's in charge of building the league's GSOC from scratch and created an intelligence apparatus to monitor for threats and inform business decisions and strategy within the league, along with adding a layer of resilience to business continuity and emergency preparedness. Welcome, Rob.
Glad to be here, Chuck.
Our next guest is Michael Beamer. Mike is the Vice President of Security at SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park, which is over a 300-acre complex. Big responsibility. As I said, Mike's in charge of overseeing everything regarding security and health and safety regarding employees and guests that visit SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park. Prior to starting at Hollywood Park in 2019, Mike worked for the National Basketball Association, supporting security for the G League, which is the minor leagues for the NBA, and oversaw security for Team USA for their travel security as well as physical security at locations around the world. Prior to that, Mike served in the United States Secret Service, serving in field offices as well as on the Presidential Protection Division. So we both have a lot of experience here between Rob and Mike. So welcome, Mike.
Good to see you, Chuck.
Yep, and thanks for joining us. And I think this will be a great conversation in talking about all the complexities and requirements in overseeing not just a large-scale event for the Super Bowl, but everything that you do day in and day out with respect to security within the National Football League and at SoFi, and how that played into the overall planning for Super Bowl 56. So Mike, let's start with you. You know, you had an interesting situation here with COVID. You had, fans entering the venue for the first time. And, you had special events and leading up to the Super Bowl. So why don't you lead us through all the complexities on a regular basis that you deal with at SoFi and how that all led into handling the large scale planning for Super Bowl from your perspective?
Thanks again, Chuck. And hello, Rob. Good to see you again. So leading into the Super Bowl, we're a new stadium, and as you mentioned, COVID. So we started a season without fans, and then we went into a season with fans, and then having to do different vaccine verifications, adding complexities to the screening process and getting people on site. So then also knowing that we have the Super Bowl coming up, that's always in the back of our mind, and how the NFL is going to operate our venue compared to how we're going to operate it. That being the people coming into the stadium, we have our entry gates that people are filing in, but we have an extended perimeter, but the NFL really comes in and uses all of our campus, the 300 acres, and pushes out that perimeter even further. So what the NFL is going to do, or what they did, was different than what we were doing on a daily basis. And then also just learning the building and how people travel around our stadium. We do have a complex stadium. We're 100 feet into the ground. People come in on level 6 in some areas, and then in some instances they're coming in off level 5. So just learning how people move about our stadium, it was difficult in the beginning, and it continues to be a learning experience on that side.
Yeah, definitely a big job. My experience was with Super Bowl 50 and a few of the Super Bowls beforehand, working at the Department of Homeland Security. But Super Bowl 50, I was one of the deputy federal coordinators for that. So, Rob, I know what a big undertaking it is, especially from an intelligence standpoint. So with respect to your planning leading up to the Super Bowl, what did that look like for you? And what were the primary concerns that you wanted the GSOC to be able to handle and pay attention to?
Thanks for the question, Chuck. What most listeners probably wouldn't know is that as the GSOC, we actually start planning 18 months out. We do something, an intelligence product that we call a scouting report. We're essentially looking at the different factors that are happening in a particular region. So that could be geopolitical factors, that could be a rise or lowering in crime, anything that could impact the safety and security of our personnel, but also our fans who are going to be in attendance at those games. That allows us to really start driving our engagement for our intelligence partners, both at state, local, and federal levels, which we could talk a little more about later on. But also, we're kind of that conduit to our corporate partners as well. Within that NFL footprint, there's a host of different groups who are also having events and different activities. So we try to start really being that hub and driving that conversation. And for us, there really isn't an off season per se. So those relationships are fostered both during the season when we're observing the activities and stuff that are happening during games, but also during the off season when there's potentially side events or maybe nothing at all, but that engagement is still just as important.
Yeah, all true. Very important points. Mike, how did what you do every day, especially with Hollywood Park and having an area that's open and accessible every single day, separate from the stadium, how did all of your security planning, what you do each and every day, how you approach that, how did that help you? And what, if anything, did you find that you needed to adjust leading up into the Super Bowl? I know that you've got strong relationships at the local level there with both fire and police. And how did all that play into the Super Bowl coming to your stadium?
Well, we've actually gone through like you said, I've been here since 2019, so it's been 3 years now. Have had many chapters here in my time with Hollywood Park. We started as a construction site and then turned into a construction site under COVID, and then into a stadium and campus with COVID. And now we're starting to kind of back off from that with some of the restrictions being lifted. But just from the beginning on, meeting with police and fire was probably the most important thing on my side to do, and get on the same page with them and getting assistance with them. But we still have a restricted campus. It's I would say semi-open. We still have the fences up around the perimeter, but by no means are we posting those areas. So we see people walking their dogs or going on a jog through the campus every now and then. We do have the ability to shut it down when we want to, and then that developed perfectly hand in hand with the NFL coming on and creating that perimeter, and then looking at what a game or any event versus the Super Bowl build out. So like I said, we're a 300-acre campus with the stadium. The NFL media building is on the campus. We have a lake, and then there's a retail district being built, not to mention the numerous parking lots that accommodate about 10,000 vehicles. So it gave the NFL a good footprint to do what they want to do with their different activities that they host, whether it's on location, some tailgating activities, or just broadcast compounds. And then Bacchus, I'll let Rob touch base more on that if he chooses. But having those relationships, and then really, I guess, starting the relationship with the police and fire from the get-go, we always had the Super Bowl in mind. And okay, this is what we're doing for a game. How can we expand that footprint? And then obviously, Chuck, you have the firsthand experience with it, but working with Jesse Baker from the Secret Service as the Fed coordinator on helping to bring those assets together, and then the FBI, who is here each major event, the football games, on that relationship that we have on assisting there as well, with the knowing the FBI has quite a few players there, but yeah, having those relationships, because there's you have CBP, DHS assets there, so there's quite a bit that come out to assist in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, thanks. All good points. You definitely had a strong team coming out of DHS, led by the federal coordinator, as you alluded to, Jesse Baker, who you and I both worked with in the Secret Service for a long period of time, and the resources that are available. And Rob, this kind of segues nicely into the next question for you, and because I'm interested in your perspective. With the Super Bowl being designated and receiving a special event assessment rating 1, which is the highest special event assessment rating system, what did you feel that did for you in terms of opening up the intelligence sharing aperture, if you will, across federal, state, and local levels? And also, what I asked Mike is just as applicable to you, because I know the GSOC and what the NFL does each and every day throughout the country with respect to your operations. How did you find that all kind of came together very nicely for you, and how it enhanced your ability to get your hands on information that you needed?
Thanks. That's a great question, Chuck. For us, that SEER 1 rating certainly heightens the ability for us to share more directly with our federal partners. DHS has been a great partner of the league for quite a while now. In particular with the See Something, Say Something program that really started off. It was in July 2010. We leveraged it during Super Bowl 45. At what was Cowboy Stadium. And that See Something, Say Something program really engages our partners across all levels to really lean in and say, hey, if we come across information that, could cause or disrupt not only the game, because, you have the game as the main focal point, but we have a lot of fan-facing events that are going on throughout the city of Los Angeles, all across the Valley. So, safety and security is at the forefront of our minds. Also on the Bureau side, we have engagement with them all year round because many of their field offices support our games. They have participants that are actually there on site, either if they're JTTF or others. It really allows all those partners to lean in and have good information sharing. And more importantly, as we're leading up to the event, and even the week of, if we do come across threat information, you literally have all law enforcement engaging and ensuring that the information is being passed as quickly as possible, that they have the resources on standby to be able to address whatever those concerns might be. And we had a couple of instances in which we received potential disruptive information or disruptive threats, and we were able to pass those to it in real time and get resolution. Usually less than 24 hours, after us presenting that information to those guys. So it really, from the intelligence side, it just puts a rocket ship on what we're able to do, and really gives us a lot of confidence during that week that we are providing a safe, secure environment.
Yeah. No, thanks, Rob. And it reminds me, because there's a constant theme here, and we talk about how big of a responsibility this is in terms of securing the Super Bowl. And with that comes a lot of information and a lot of responsibility. And at the end of the day, right, you're just one person. And so I'm interested, Mike, especially at a place like SoFi, multi-billion-dollar venue, Hollywood Park, all these responsibilities, an overwhelming amount of information on a regular basis coming in to you and the team. Let's talk about technologies. And again, not having to get too specific, but I'm interested in your approach to utilizing and leveraging technologies to help you manage that on a daily basis, and especially for the Super Bowl.
We were back to relationships with the PD. We were able to tap into some of their resources, still have a secret clearance, so able to get access to some of those programs by whether it be the sheriff's department, and then or a JRIC information coming out. Internally getting the information. We have for the game, the NFL brings their own NFL control room where NFL security, they have cameras from us, and then they bring in some of their own cameras. As I mentioned before, they're building out different structures. Their perimeter is further out from our game, so their gates are further out. So we need visibility there. So communicating with each other on it's kind of what we're not used to on a game, because we're usually at our event command center. So now we're bringing in a partner, and we need to work with them side by side. And there's really no build up to this. We have some previous games that we can work off of, but there's really only one Super Bowl. There's nothing, not much compares to it. So really kind of learn on the fly a bit as the game goes on, and working with one another. Excuse me. But sorry about that. So the one thing that's on the leading up to Super Bowl that we actually did use Titan for and actually got great feedback was we had different entries and parking lots that were closed and open on day by day or week by week, and we actually were communicating with our staff with the Titan app on directing which way that people should be entering the site, how they're entering through the stadium, what credentials might be needed. So that was one thing that our staff was very appreciative of the information flow on and getting that out to them.
Yeah, I mean, so many different buckets to have to communicate with, right? Your own employees, you've got league officials that are relying on systems at SoFi. Then you've got the fans, the general public, the ticketed public, all the other events going on. Rob, how did that help you going to a brand new stadium that is leveraging the latest in technological solutions? Not just with safety and security, but that all hazards approach, right? We're talking about anything from an act of potential terrorism to natural disasters, right? And so how did you kind of leverage that, and also anything that you did in addition to that to help you manage all this information that's coming into a place like the GSOC?
No. One of the challenges we had, I would say, in prior Super Bowls is that we had maybe too many comms channels. So we really leaned in this year to try to centralize as much as we could via Titan. The other challenge that we came into this year with, which is a very unique one, is that the Hollywood Park campus is the first time we've had a facility that is directly for the league that's sharing the same campus as a stadium. And oh, by the way, that's the same campus in which we're going to have the Super Bowl. During the summer, once we made the move and NFL Network was formally placed at Hollywood Park, one of the things that we had to learn from the GSOC was, what goes on at the campus. And one of the things that we kind of worked with Michael's team on was really leveraging Titan to be that kind of communications conduit. We were doing it internally with NFL Network, really leveraging it for kind of facility security, which was kind of different than the original intent that we had for Titan HST, which was just emergency broadcasting. And we learned a lot. We learned, like how sensitive our fire alarms can be. We also learned about, the different things that occur on campus during the events that, Michael and his team was hosting at SoFi. So that really started to give us some awareness and some insight on what are some of the things that we can expect that were going on at the campus. We had a shared a site between Michael's team and ours for some of those larger events. And again, it gave us a lot of insight into how that campus moves and operates. Where do the fans go to? What are some of the vulnerability points? What are some areas that we need to pay attention to? Being 2,800 plus miles away in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, that's the kind of information that's valuable for us for our planning. And even it helps with us when we were thinking about, how do we engage with our partners? And it's not just the partners on the security space. To go back to a point that we made earlier, we have a lot of corporate partners who are going to be bringing VIPs and leadership into that campus or into areas around that campus for the first time. So we're able to use that information, provide that insight. And for us, without being on the ground all the time, it really kind of I guess, shortens that barrier of entry for really understanding what are some of the factors that we had to consider as we get closer to the big game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mike, Rob just brought up, the almost the begs to be asked the pros and cons of having a campus that large and, for the first time being able to almost house every NFL associated event or the majority of them within Hollywood Park. Looking back at that, what were the pros and the cons of being able to kind of house everything right there in the vicinity of the stadium? I mean, again, 300 acres to build and establish a perimeter and enforce that is an undertaking in and of itself. So I'm interested what your thoughts are on that.
Well, pros are, I think that instead of having multiple sites that you have to protect, you can put more assets in one location. So that's, I think, is helpful. We have I don't know if I mentioned, we do have the a performance venue. A YouTube theater is on campus as well. So NFL Honors was held here. And this is the first time that Honors was held at the same site as the stadium or the host. So I think that that just brought in more logistics with planning. So there's you have two different sites that we have American Airlines Plaza that separates the two of them, which is probably less than 100 yards. So you're having two separate sites with two different credentials that allow access one to the other. So those are complexities where the NFL and Hollywood Park has to look at where are our checkpoints to get to one versus the other. And not to mention, we had a couple games during the Super Bowl advance period, which I know throws a wrench in the NFL's plans and the build out there. So we had the NFC Championship game between the Rams and the Niners 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, and I believe that might be the first time that's happened. Okay, so going back and forth between the routine operation or Super Bowl operations to our game day operations, our procedures are this way until Saturday at 6 p.m. and then they revert back to the Hollywood Park procedures and then flipping them back on. Again, communicating that was really important for the communication to the staff. I think just bringing the number of people is, although that's a pro, it's also a con with, like I mentioned, like the credentials and making sure that people have the proper credentials, and that's more people to check. So obviously more room for error when you're bringing more people into the site.
Yeah. Important points. Rob, so your leadership, you've got your, head of all things security, Kathy Lanier, who I've known for many years when she was chief of the DC Police Department and now at the NFL. There's a lot of attention to detail here, an experienced law enforcement and security executive. What's the tempo leading up to game day here from your leadership at the NFL? And what are you paying attention to specifically to brief up, if you will, all things that need to be considered and paid attention to?
Yeah, another great question, Chuck. As you'd imagine, Kathy is very forward-leaning, and she really thinks about, how can we be proactive, in identifying, potential disruptions, and that's really all threats, all hazards. So that can even be a freakish weather event, earthquakes, that can be, items that maybe are kind of unforeseen, but kind of pop out of the blue. For instance, one of the issues that was kind of a running thread was the potential for this Truckers for Freedom convoy to potentially disrupt the Super Bowl. There was a DHS-wide bulletin that was released on that initially started with just a couple of murmurs and was very isolated as far as the impact. But then suddenly it became, because the Super Bowl was such a major event, a real possibility that all of our partners had to lean in on. So anything that we know of that falls along those lines, is definitely briefed all the way up. And then that drives our coordination and collaboration, throughout the entirety. So like, even you're thinking like, multiple months out, we are constantly engaged in looking at those kind of items. Initially, I guess additionally, we had a member of the GSOC actually as the lead for our security command center that was forward in LA. So that gave us additional connectivity to those partners that were on the ground, and additional engagement in different areas that might have not saying not been missed, but we might not be able to cover as thoroughly just because we're trying to cover so many things. So that includes other issues like potential human trafficking, that covers issues of there's a lot of side parties that happen that in the LA footprint that aren't necessarily tied to the league directly, but people would assume that they are just by proxy. There was some concerns on spikes in crime with that area, and safety and security of employees as paramount, particularly in Kathy's mind and ours. So, as we're going through all of those things, anything that crosses that threshold gets moved up. And then we're working on mitigation strategies on, how can we ensure, we're telling our staff, these kind of things, does this put them in a good position? Do we have the right tools and technology to ensure those staff are alerted of a dynamic environment, which, for this case, Titan was a key part of that. And then, what do we do if something does happen? Those are constantly in the back of our minds and literally drives everything that we do.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is the role of cybersecurity, right? How cyber can impact physical security and vice versa. So, but you bring up all of these other things like the Freedom Convoy and the potential disruptions that those might bring to things like traffic. And so you've got all this information coming at you. And Mike, what's your approach as these things pop up? What's your approach to make sure you and your team are not getting too tunnel visioned on what I'll call a new and emerging threat or a new and emerging disruption, like what Rob was just describing?
Yeah, I think just with experience with Chuck, Rob, those on the call, that just know that one thing could be a distraction to another. So you just can't let yourself, like you said, Chuck, just be tunnel vision and focus on one thing. There was the truck convoy. There was the known protests about COVID restrictions. How is that going to impact our entries? And then the smaller scale of just people that are just trying to sneak into the game. How are you going to deal with that? Because someone sneaking into the game might seem innocent, that someone wants to go watch a Super Bowl, but what are their intentions? And then that one person jumping the fence, if you have people converging on them, what is happening 100 yards away? What's happening on the other side? So just remaining alert at all times. And then you mentioned cyber. We have our IT team works with the NFL cyber team and DHS CISA. The building up to that, whether it's just tightening up what we have going on here, whether it's just as basic as an IDF closet or VPNs into the network, and shutting those down for a period of time to make sure that we're comfortable in what's going to take place, because this is, again, not any other game on it being broadcast. This is going out to the world. So we have international broadcasts as well as the local broadcasts. So there's a lot more coming in that we're not used to. And that's what that whole advanced period helps us with, in understanding who is here, who's plugging into what. And there's different construction that goes on during the buildup that still patching up some holes on that were left behind. But yeah, there's quite a bit to go on that it actually doesn't allow you to focus on one thing.
Yeah, all good points. And Rob, same thing with you, right? Keeping that aperture as wide as possible in terms of the consumption, and you're overseeing a lot of intelligence and communications analysts and professionals And how do you do that? How do you make sure that your team doesn't just all point at the same time in one direction? How do you handle that?
Well, a couple of things. Well, one, we're one of the few GSOCs that has the intelligence, physical security, and cyber security underneath one roof, which is helpful because the more eyes who are kind of splitting apart the pie, the better. Two is definitely experience. So the league has been very fortunate that the folks within our teams, if you would have totaled the years up, probably hundreds of years of experience of doing this kind of work. Recognizing that you can't get overrun by the tyranny of the urgent. There's going to be times when you have 5, 10 different threads of information that are going through and coming along. And if you're a threat response center, which we essentially are, you have to build a triage and assign folks to, hey, work this issue. As Mike said, we had issues with folks trying to sneak in. We had folks, with posts saying that they're going to try, X, Y, and Z. We still have to maintain that overarching situation awareness of all the things that are going on. And for those listeners out there from the GSOC side, it's not just from the stadium campus. We have events that are going on downtown. So we had the Super Bowl experience that was at the LA Convention Center. We had a host of different parties and events, fan-facing, that are going on all over the place. We have personnel who are filming various activations and shoots all throughout LA City. So we're also have to keep eyes on them as well. So we can't be good stewards if we all jump on just one incident. We'll make sure that we're addressing it and run it to ground. But at the same time, our job is to keep that full-on common operating picture across all things to maintain that effectiveness.
Yeah. I always thought that one of the greatest things as we kind of segue here into day of the big game, I always thought one of the greatest things was how they bring in the following year's team from whatever city is hosting the next Super Bowl to kind of spend the week with folks like you that are living it and understanding everything that's required, to be looked at and the roles and responsibilities and just what a big responsibility this is and all the different tricks that each of you have in terms of how you manage this, right? So the big question as we go into day of is, how did you feel your year, 18 months, Rob, for you of preparation for the big day? How do you feel that panned out for you when you start seeing things unfolding? Mike, we'll start with you.
Oh, geez. Anxious, nervous as it comes around. I think that, I feel that way I'm pretty much that way for each event. In that, the planning that we do, what did we miss? That's the nature of our business, trying to make sure that we cover everything. And then when you do operations plans, you can armchair quarterback anything and always come up with different ways to do something. And there's no one right way. And then what we always just say, hey, we have to be right every day. And then someone just has to be right once when coming to the site. When you look at other events, I went to Miami for their Super Bowl and saw how they planned. And it's always, hey, what did they do? And how can we replicate that? And we have a stadium that's unlike really any other. So that makes it difficult from the get-go, and then not knowing, like I said before, that first year on how we are operating. And then we have one of the two stadiums with two teams, being the Chargers and the Rams, and just going week after week after week. And hey, can we do this? I don't know. We kind of just need to keep pushing forward because we got another game in 6 days. Maybe we have another game in 4 days. Who knows? So getting everything set, and then it was helpful for the NFL to come in and have a Super Bowl and look at what we're doing, and having an outside eye, someone that has had the ability to take a breath and say, hey, this could be helpful. This could be helpful. The NFL's they know all the stadiums, and we don't have the time and the bandwidth to travel and figure out what's going to work best in a short amount of time as well. Not to mention concerts that take place in the season that bring a whole new path of travel for guests that go down in the field. So when we got to, I knew that we squeezed really 2 seasons into one, having the 2 teams, some concerts. We opened in May of 21 with the Vax Live, and starting with that, then going to another concert, an EDM concert, football season. So I knew that we've done a lot in a little amount of time. So I know that the staff was prepared when the time came. But then, Super Bowl, people are coming earlier. We have more people, different check-in process that they've gone through. So getting everyone prepared, trying to lay everything out for everyone. We actually have on-site parking for most employees on a game day. This was I don't know if really maybe a handful. Most people were coming from off-site. So that just if you think about it, that extends your perimeter. Your perimeter begins at the offsite shuttle and employee check-in, and then it covers everything from there and in between. If you really think about it, that's what you have to keep secure, not just your site and people coming on the site, but all the way out to there. So the NFL definitely pushed us and forced us into uncomfortable areas that I think everyone is thankful for and better for now.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up an important point, right? And that is you're in the fight every day at this location. And it's the ability, I think it's one of the greatest things out there as a security professional is knowing how to utilize and leverage people that are coming in from the outside and can kind of give you a fresh look at different challenges that you may be facing. So, I think that's great that you were able to leverage that and utilize those recommendations and really come together. And like you said, I think at the end of all this, hopefully you would agree that SoFi is all the more better because of it from their, for their security posture. And, Rob, same thing with you, right? You're at an off-site location, thousands of miles away in New Jersey, and you're doing your thing. And of course, you're working on procedures and policies that may have changed and been enhanced based on what you learned from the year prior. What did that look like for you? And did everything that you did over that 18 months help you?
Well, it's interesting because, every Super Bowl is different, whether it's by location, the size, which I would say LA is probably one of the bigger ones we've maybe ever done, and just some of the dynamics that surround it. The good news is from the GSOC perspective is that we support every league event. So every game that occurs throughout the season, every event that happens during the off season, such as draft and combine, even our international series, so we are constantly learning and evolving and fine tuning our craft as we lead up to the big game. In addition, we're learning a lot from our sports league partners. So we learn a lot from their big events, from the All-Star games to the World Series, anything that they're doing and kind of their key takeaways are things that will add to our toolkit and to our awareness. Also, 2021 was kind of a different year because, fans were experiencing games, in bulk for the first time, and you saw some different dynamics. So there was a lot more fan-related incidents, though unfortunate. So we were kind of observing with our sports league partners throughout the year, particularly during the off season, on some of the challenges that they had, and even as far as like enforcing COVID-related policies. Because again, those are just informational for us. Thanks to our communications with Michael Beamer's team, we were able to learn a lot from how those events that he was hosting impacted his campus, his stadium, and even our campus and NFL Network. So when the day of game came, it's kind of like that final test. all the things that you have learned, all the things that you have practiced and fine-tuned matter the most on that day. And that's from, the very early morning hours when staff are loading into the stadium, into the campus, to, the transport of personnel from the LA downtown footprint over to SoFi, all the way to the game and all the way post game. Every single thing that we do at that point is just practicing everything that we've had to fine tune over that time. And for us, it is our Super Bowl just as much as it is for those teams. All that hard work, pays off at that moment. All that collaboration and coordination pays off at that moment. For us, though it's a continuous thing, that the validation that the things that we're doing are correct happen on that day. And when the fans who come to those games, walks away with a wonderful experience, that they can pass on for generations, we've done our jobs. When our staff are able to get back home, and return to their friends and family safely, that again is that validation that we've done the right things. So even though it's a continuous learning experience, Super Bowl is that ultimate test.
Yeah, no, those are great points. And I think, just sitting here and listening to both of you, there's no doubt in my mind that the strong, solid foundations that both the league and you, Mike, at SoFi have established in terms of your policies, your procedures, your relationships, your communication, each and every day doing what you each do, certainly play a pivotal role here, right? I was told a long time ago, don't seek to establish a partnership during a crisis, right? That's the wrong time to try and do that. And I think what you're explaining here is an important point, and that is leveraging what you do each and every day and doing it right, where it has a natural maturation, if you will, to the big day. So with that, we should probably wrap it up here soon. And I would love to ask you, Mike, is there an area that you thought you underestimated that maybe in your mind next go around you might pay a little more attention to, or did you feel like you had everything covered there in terms of things that might pop up on game day?
I think the one thing that stood out to me was at the end of the game was the exterior and egress. So, when people come into the event, there's, I think, a 4-hour window that we permitted them to enter the stadium. So people are trickling in at various times. You have 70,000 people that coming in at the different gates. At the end of the game, we have 70,000 people that are all exiting at the same time. So maybe a 30-minute mark. So I think there could have leveraged more of our perimeter, and though maybe we had certain entries open, and then a little better on to the exterior. We have a ride share location that everyone's funneling to, but if maybe a few more paths of travel, working with the ride share companies to establish additional locations, that might be a stretch. So just getting more ways for people to get there. I don't want to. People often think about the entry. Hey, what time are they getting there? How are they getting there? But then, hey, the confetti's falling, and then people want to celebrate. So, and that's not just. I'm not saying that for this game, but for every event. Some people neglect the exit and the exit strategy.
Got it. Yeah, it's often underestimated and by some folks not realized what a role logistics plays in security, especially for an event this size. And we're not just talking about logistics for setups of stages and other types of equipment. We're talking about the logistics of people. And, you're kind of assuming on multiple fronts how human beings are going to behave, how they're going to exit, where they're going to go. And you try and guide that as much as possible. But 70,000 people are 70,000 people. It's the size of a small city. And we've got to remember that. So you try and do everything possible to plan for that. And that is often one of the areas that I hear presents a challenge, which is unique to each and every environment. So Rob, same question to you. Anything that popped up and not necessarily caught you by surprise, but something that you think, next year we're going to kind of bump this up in terms of priority?
Yeah, actually, I would echo what Mike said was egress. For him, it's the fan side. For us, as our staff. All of our staff were positioned for the most part in hotels that are right around crypto.com arena, which we had learned is where a lot of the fans go to celebrate, when like the Lakers win or what have you. We thought that there was enough resources kind of on the ground to reposition individuals who would engage in celebration and whatnot. Unfortunately, that caused we had some issues that happened as our staff was returning back to the downtown footprint, and then you started getting more and more fans showing up in and around the area. Then law enforcement resources are responding and trying to contain those crowds, and we had staff members at times trapped with those crowds in areas that are getting blocked off, folks who are trying to use kind of like the agreed upon routes, but now they're no longer available. So the good news is we had Titan HST there, so we were able to communicate to our staff members the most recent information. The bad news was it was super dynamic. So we're kind of operating underneath 5-minute intervals of new information on what roads are closed or whatnot. It was a takeaway we had during the Tampa Super Bowl. LA presented a more dynamic environment. It's something for us, when we're contemplating, our egress in the future, I think is what we're really going to lean in on that and make sure, our communications plans or even our contingency route plans are well mapped out and considered and even tested prior to our next Super Bowl.
Well, I got to tell you, I personally am very thankful that the two of you were involved in helping secure Super Bowl 56. I think what our listeners have just heard from each of you is a strong attention to detail and really just a genuine concern for the health and safety of everybody involved, employees and guests and vendors, to make sure that this went off without a hitch. And I know it was a long year, a long 18 months for you, Rob. And, the both of you don't look the worse for it. You actually came away with a lot of lessons learned and I'm sure have some great stories that you could tell. But, also the important role that DHS played here with the thousands of resources and specialized equipment that they provided to make sure that you succeeded. The NFL in general for all that they did to make sure that Super Bowl 56 came off without a hitch and really was a flawless experience, not for just those that attended in person, but for the millions and millions that watched around the world. And Mike, to you and your team, all the hours that you put in and what you do each and every day, really at a brand new, technologically enhanced venue that the country hasn't seen, in recent history. So thanks for all that you do each and every day and the ingenuity that both of you bring to your positions. And I thank you both for taking the time today, sharing some of the lessons learned and the detailed planning that went into a Super Bowl. And if those in Arizona are listening to everything that you had to say today, I'm sure they're going to benefit as they did during their visit to this year's Super Bowl with all the best practices that you employed this year. So thank you both, and we'll let you get back to work, and thanks for taking the time.
Appreciate it, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck. See you, Rob.
And thanks again to Titan HST for sponsoring this important conversation for our audience.